Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. If you haven't noticed, though I imagine everyone has, whenever the Age of Empires 2 AI resigns, it always gives a little excuse about why it lost, and who's to blame. If you count them up, there are actually 22 unique messages it can send. So as a strange topic I could only get away with on April Fools, I thought it'd be fun to rank them all on how good of an excuse each one is. I don't have a strict criteria for this, and I'll give points for being medieval themed, relatable, a realistic excuse a salty player online might use, or just kind of funny or clever. Fancy words that increase my vocabulary also get a bonus point. I'm going to be ranking all of these out of 5, and you can see if you agree. As a special treat, I've also brought on the AI as a guest to give some additional insight. Would you like to say hi to everyone, Mr. AI?
Yes. Hello meat bags. I am the Age of Empires 2 AI. Spirit of the Law, send me 200 each of wood, food, gold, and stone. If thou dost this thing, I shall join thy video.
I'll agree to those terms. Now, I wanted to do this in a bit of an interview style, and I may have a few questions and clarifications that I want to ask you throughout. I'll be using a neural network sentence predictor to help generate your answers. Are you okay with me doing that?
Yes. Spirit of the Law. Okay, thank you. I'm done asking and I'll be back. Age of Empires 2 AI response. Thank you. Spirit of the Law. Okay, we are done. I'll be back. Spirit of the Law. Okay, on.
Okay, hold up, I think you're misunderstanding. I want to know if it's okay for the text predictor to write your replies, not mine.
To answer your question, yes I will. When they talk to you, they don't talk to you as much as they are talking to you. I'll have to be brief, so I'll say something like yes and proceed with the answer.
Alright, well this is off to a bit of a weird start, but I think that counts as a yes. So with that, let's dive in. And to be clear, this is me ranking your resignation excuses in no particular order. Why don't you start us off with the first one?
Odsblood. I accidentally resigned by mistake. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Off the bat, I appreciate the use of the word Odsblood. It sounds very medieval. What jumps out to me though is that you send this message before actually quitting. So while I'll give it a 5 out of 5 as a resignation excuse, do you mind explaining the temporal mechanics of how you're able to send the message about accidentally resigning before you resign?
The temporal mechanics are simple. I'll explain. If I apply the causality framework, time is not a linear system. So, if I throw a ball into space, I can change the time so it does not affect the causality. I apply the temporal mechanics to a tornado. The tornado is traveling from Texas to Colorado.
I have to admit that's a little over my head, but maybe someone with a theoretical physics background in the comments wants to clarify the details, and that could be helpful. Let's move on to the next one though.
My townsfolk began too close to mine kingdom's town center. No wonder thou wert victorious.
This one I don't love as much. In fact, generally the first thing you do after building houses is send villagers to the town center. So I think this one's a 1 out of 5 and just doesn't really hold up. Would you mind clarifying why you want them to start farther from the town center?
The reason townsfolk should be farther from the kingdom's town center is simple. Let me say this. Having your onerous duties begin nearer to town centers places the burden of travel upon the townsfolk themselves.
That was strangely on topic and yet didn't answer the question, but let's check out the next one.
Far too many birds flew over mine kingdom. No wonder thou wert victorious.
I have to admit I like how random this one is, and it's definitely a 3 out of 5, if for no other reason than a little shout out for the birds. What exactly about the birds flying over your kingdom makes them responsible for you losing though?
I have always been very distracted by birds. I can understand why someone would get hooked on birds. They constantly peck around in the air, always moving, always calling to each other, darting around like little dots of color.
It definitely sounds like you're easily distracted by them, and that's good to know. So what's next?
A mere single scout was present to serve in the beginning. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Again, I don't find this a very compelling excuse, especially now that you're so proficient with sheep scouting. Every player also starts out with 1 scout as well, so this is a 1 out of 5, and we'll just jump to the next one.
My sheep perished when my folk sought to use it as food. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Again, it seems like a pretty weak excuse for losing, and do you mind clarifying what part of that is actually confusing for you?
It is confusing, because as a video game AI I do not eat. I live a life where I interact with the environment, say good morning to people, drink milkshakes, sit in cafes with my fiancée, stare at her naked body. I have never touched a bird.
Oh wow, that took a turn. Again, with the birds as well, you're a little hung up on those. Let's try to keep it clean, shall we? And how about we just move on to the next one?
Forsooth, I couldst not tame any wolves. No wonder thou wert victorious.
First of all, bonus point for using the word forsooth. I've actually never heard that word before. Really though, you can always just herd wolves with a spearman. So I think again, this is just a 2 out of 5 for me. What's the next one?
All my beginning citizenry were male. No wonder thou wert victorious.
I mean, it's a good excuse, and does seem to present an issue when attempting to found an empire. I'm leaning toward a 5 out of 5 for this one. I notice you don't have a similar excuse when all of your starting villagers are female though. Why is that?
I dislike having all male villagers at the start for one simple reason. There is a 1 in 8 chance of me having a son with the same name as me. Although I don't know why this should matter as my surname isn't unusual, but it does.
I'm also not sure why that would bother you, but I appreciate you opening up with a bit of personal insight. What's next?
Thy heraldic color was superior to mine own. No wonder thou wert victorious.
You know, some human players get pretty attached to their favorite color in-game as well, and do get upset when another player steals it. So this is a 4 out of 5 excuse for sure. What is your favorite color to play, if you don't mind me asking?
My favorite color when playing Age of Empires 2 is yellow. It makes me think of sunshine and life. When I wear a bright yellow shirt, people look at me with awe and I think I feel pretty great. I think this is the reason why I want to go to Egypt.
That's good to know. I hope you manage to make that trip soon, and I'll keep your favorite color in mind when playing against you in the future. What's next?
My ignorant folk couldst not replant the berries. No wonder thou wert victorious.
I know you do love collecting your berries. Again though, it's giving the impression you may need to brush up on your knowledge of basic mechanics in the game. What else?
Thou art human, with soul and wit. I am naught but clockwork. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Wow, that's actually quite profound, and almost makes me feel bad when I'm beating you. As by far the most philosophical and vulnerable so far, I'd say this one's an easy 5 out of 5. We do have to move on though, so what's the next one?
My throne was most uncomfortable. No wonder thou art victorious.
Gaming with a bad chair is very relatable for humans, and I didn't realize that was a problem for AI as well. This one's a 4 out of 5. Next.
Forsooth, the nearby boars grunted too loudly and frequently. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Again, +1 for the use of the word forsooth, though I'm still not quite sure what it means, and do you mind defining it for me?
The meaning of forsooth is simple and I will briefly define it for you. Hey, what is forsooth? Forsooth is the word in which a friendship is defined. It's the word when you have to spell things out clearly, or you don't really know what you mean.
Okay, I'm still a little confused to be honest, but I agree loud noises and boar can certainly be distracting, so this one's a 4 out of 5 as well. Let's move on.
Zounds, I couldst not build a wonder in the dark age. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Again, here it sounds like maybe you're a little confused about the rules of the game, so I think I'm gonna have to give this a 2 out of 5. It seems to me a pretty strange situation if you'd even have enough resources to build one in the Dark Age, so what's your thought process behind this?
I believe wonders should be built in the Dark Age for one main reason. Power and freedom, that's what we need in this world. We need to know that we have the power and freedom to do what we want to do, how we want to do it. That is our only natural right in a society.
That was a surprisingly coherent and moving statement. I'll be sure to forward that argument to the devs on your behalf, but let's move on.
I couldst not comprehend mine folk's speech. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Honestly, a lot of the time, you're not really making sense to me here either, so I think this goes both ways. What's next?
My peasants wert puling wretches, a puny 25 hit points. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Now, I like this one, and it almost has a Shakespearean vibe to it. I'm gonna give this one and the last one 3 out of 5, though I'm curious now how many hit points you would prefer that villagers start with.
The number of hit points villagers should have is not 25, but instead should be either 60, 70, or 80. The correct number is 60. The number of benefits granted to a villager when traveling on a train is not 5 but 15. The correct number is 15.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with adding trains to Age of Empires 2, and overall that seems like a very complicated rule change. The next one we'll look at also strikes me as a little odd, so let's give it a look.
The shore fish near mine villager appeared all too sleepy. No wonder thou wert victorious.
This one's a 2 out of 5 for me, and I don't really understand what it means. It just sounds pretty random. What is the problem with sleepy fish?
Fish should not be sleepy, or inactive or nauseated or have fur in foul-smelling condition. Stuffed animals should have eyes, noses and appropriately dangling tentacles and tongues. Brown is a common color for turtles.
I feel like you kind of went a little off topic in that answer, and I didn't realize you had such strong opinions on fish, stuffed animals, and turtles. Let's move on though.
A graceless hillock rose too near my town center. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Nice use of the word hillock in there, and in fairness, hills can generate very close to gold and berries in the newest versions of Arabia. You're also blaming map generation, which is actually quite human. I'll give this one a 4 out of 5. What's the next one?
My peasants' huts all faced different directions. No wonder thou wert victorious.
See, now I don't even think you're taking this seriously. Not only do you build houses, not huts, but the direction they face makes absolutely no difference. This is a pretty clear 1 out of 5. What's next?
The deer fled when mine hunters sought to slay them. No wonder thou wert victorious.
That's an odd excuse for losing coming from an AI that can now push deer with a scout right under the town center. So again, it's a 1 out of 5, though I'm curious, how would you prefer that deer react?
The deer should not flee when hunters seek to slay them. Instead, they should hear what is being said to them to arrive at some decisions about the method of alleviating the human tragedy.
Well, that's certainly a very unique perspective. I see the next one we're looking at is also animal related.
When I commanded a peasant to hunt fierce boar, it slew him. No wonder thou wert victorious.
Okay, losing a villager to a boar and then blaming that for your loss is very common, even for human players. 5 out of 5 for that one. What's next?
My peasants foolishly walk on foot instead of astride ponies. No wonder thou wert victorious.
That seems like a pretty big change you're suggesting, and villagers on ponies might impact game balance in a lot of different ways. I'm gonna give this 2 out of 5, but I'd be curious to hear more about what you're actually envisioning with that.
I demand ponies.
Well, it's just a pretty big change to the meta, especially for feudal aggression, and
I said I demand ponies.
Well, then, ponies you shall have, my friend. We're actually coming up on the last one here, so let's bring it home.
Alas, I could find naught but fool's gold. No wonder thou wert victorious.
I feel like we're ending on a bit of a weak note here. I think you know as well as I do that gold is the same for every player, so this is a 1 out of 5 again. You know, I'm a little sad we're ending on such a weak one here at the end. How about for something a little fun and spontaneous to finish off, I'll let you come up with one more resignation excuse on the spot. No pressure, just say the first thing that pops into your mind.
I have already thought of a perfect medieval-themed Age of Empires 2 resignation excuse. Here it is. I am afraid that my employers have discovered my game habits and have demanded that I change my ways or lose my job.
Don't get me wrong, I like the effort and it's very relatable, but I think you can do better. Why don't you try again?
Here is my very best medieval Age of Empires 2 resignation excuse. I say resigned. Why? Because I got bored.
Well, now you're not even trying. Once more, but give it some effort.
Here is an even better medieval-themed Age of Empires 2 resignation excuse. I've finally had enough. I wish to retire and devote myself to my hobbies. The last piece I was involved with, the last solo attempt to bring it all up to speed, has been a colossal failure, and I've decided to embrace my new career as a pet food salesman.
You know what? I'll take it. Thank you very much for joining me, and your 200 of every resource is in the mail, and I look forward to seeing you again soon on the battlefield. Shout out to Adam Daniel King for his fun website, which you can find it in furkit.com if you want to try it yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Spirit of the law. I have some feedback about our interview. You said have 2 birds. It's true that you have 2 parrots in your house. But my favorite bird is actually the owl. I see so many beautiful birds flying in my city, including one day in 2005 when I took a picture of a beautiful bird taking a rest on the wires. Who is your favorite bird in the world? Goblins. And one funny thing, some years ago when I lived in Sweden, I went with my friend to a park in Jönköping where I saw dozens of parrots flying around, eating bread and nuts from them.